Just another brother with another humble question. Just another brother with another humble question.
Welcome to A Brother with Questions. I am your host, B. Period. I appreciate you for joining me. Please go like and subscribe to the channel. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Castbox, wherever you listen to the social content, go like it for me. I appreciate you. We're going to do a reaction video here. We're reacting to Breaking Point. They do a great job. One of the things, man, of course, we all know happening right now is there is a war going on in Israel and containing Israel and Hamas, and by default, I guess you could say the Palestinian people. I'm telling you, I've been deep diving, man, trying to understand this topic, and as much as I've listened to, there's a lot I still feel like I don't understand. And so I have some opinions about just what's happening, even though I'm still trying to decipher what's really going on. And I tell you this too, as I continue. If you are, I don't know if you want to call yourself an expert or someone that's just very well informed about some of these topics, I'd appreciate it. Reach out to me. And let's talk. Let's talk about what's happening. Let's talk about your opinions. Let's talk about and help me fill in the gaps of what I don't understand about what's going on with this conflict. So let's go ahead and react to this video. Now, this video is a couple of days, but let's react to this video as they talk about what's happening in Israel.
War is huge, probably the biggest part of all of this. On top of that, as you said, President Biden addressed the conflict and made a comment about civilian casualties, about support for Israel and more. Let's take a listen to what he said yesterday.
And we will ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists. That's a guarantee. We also have to remember that Hamas does not represent, let me say it again, Hamas does not represent the vast majority of the Palestinian people on the Gaza Strip or anywhere else. Hamas is hiding behind Palestinian civilians and is despicable and, not surprisingly, cowardly as well. This also puts an added burden on Israel while they go after Hamas. But that does not lessen the need to operate in line with the laws of war. For Israeli, it has to do everything in its power. Israel has to do everything in its power.
Question. I keep hearing that talking point, that Hamas is hiding behind the citizens of Israel. And everyone has been repeating that over and over again. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but as I understand it right now, the war that is going on, or I should say the killings that are going on, are due to bomb being leveled from Israel into Gaza. And so what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is, if you are bombing Gaza, how do we know that they're hiding behind civilians when we're simply dropping bombs? And here's my question. My question is, if we are doing targeted attack, shouldn't the places that we bomb be designated Hamas, I don't know, organizational structures? Whether it's I don't know, is it a building that the members have meetings in? Is it a facility known that they conduct meetings and have briefings? Or is this, like, how are we hiding behind citizens right now when you're literally just dropping bombs? That's my question. If you know the answer, help me out.
As difficult it is to protect innocent civilians. That's difficult. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank, that pouring gasoline on fire is what it's like. This was a deal. The deal was made, and they're attacking Palestinians in places that they're entitled to be. It has to stop. They have to be held accountable. It has to stop now. Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war. I think we should be incredibly careful. I think not we, the Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel. And it's against their interest when that doesn't
And that's
happen.
that double talk that we keep seeing him do too. Because on one hand, we hear him talking about blowing about, Hamas hiding behind the infrastructure of citizens. And then on the second hand, he tells us that need to be careful about killing civilians. I'm sorry, killing civilians. And so it's that double talk that we're doing, that we're trying to support Israel unequivocally in whatever decisions they make. But at the same time, we're quote unquote, I'm gonna call it pretending, because I don't see how. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how what Israel is doing is protecting citizens. I'm gonna just say that way. Protecting civilians. But we're saying we want to protect civilians, but we're backing unequivocally, without question, every action that is happening when we can see the number of civilian deaths continue to rise. And so I'm wondering, what's our real goal, or what do we really feel? And if we really just want to support Israel, which is, the president's right if that's what he chooses, well, then let's just say that. And let's not do the double talk. Because the double talk to me is just confusing. Let's keep going.
But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
A lot of people think that in order to conceal carry, you're going to need a tactical belt and a set of jeans. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't. In fact, you can carry in a bathing suit, in a business suit, or in your birthday.
But aren't these hostages in jeopardy if there is a ground invasion?
You want to make a speech?
So the takeaway that we can get there from President Biden is clear. Number one, we support Israel. Number two, trying to at least rhetorically talk about civilian casualties and about the expanding situation in the West Bank. We're going to try and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, just to make sure that people understand it. One of the reasons why is Hezbollah is not the only two-front war that could happen in this. The people in the West Bank, they are very supportive of Hamas. The last poll that came out of there showed the vast majority. If the election were held today, there hasn't been an election since 2005, they would probably elect them. And so that means that anything that's going on in Gaza is not going to be contained to Gaza. We've talked about the prospect of a wider war in Lebanon, with Egypt, with Jordan, or with any of the Arab countries.
And that's the worrying thing here. Like, yeah, we're talking about Israel and Israel's bombing Gaza, but there's so many other entities out there now that are looking at the way the West is supporting Israel, literally bombing the crap out of Gaza, and they are not feeling, I don't want to call it the love, but they're not feeling the devastation that's happening They're not understanding why people are so accepting of civilian deaths in Gaza. And to me, that's the part of the U.S. where I'm going, what's the strategic goal here, U.S.? Because I get the emotional take from Israel. I understand that. But the U.S., in my opinion, we should be more strategic about our responses, because we understand that if it goes to the left in terms of other countries not appreciating what's being done to Gaza, and now they want to participate, we know that we're going to go in with our own military and assist in some way, shape, or form. They did another video on Breaking Points about how some of the Iranian-supported militant groups supposedly are attacking in Syria and in other places already. And we're now having to defend ourselves from them. And so if our goal is not to get into another war, as Americans, as the U.S., why aren't we being more strategic about how we approach this publicly and privately? Because publicly, we're doing a terrible job. If our goal is to avoid war, based on what we're saying publicly, I don't know how we're going to do that. Now, I don't know what we're doing privately. I've heard some stories about how we've tried to meet with some of these neighboring countries and the leadership in those neighboring countries, and some of them have shunned us. Not all of them have taken our call in the way that we want. And a lot of that, I think, has to do what we've said publicly. So where is our strategy? And what is our strategy? Because I don't think most Americans are on board with doing another war.
Even we did not or have not flagged yet that it's very possible that a war inside the country itself, including the West Bank, the population there, and a lot of weapons that are coming to the area, could also explode. That's part of the reason why probably President Biden made it a choice, to deliberately flag this in the same speech. The first time, I believe, that he has said anything to that effect.
There's a lot to say about what President Biden just said there. I mean, first on this piece of, I'm sure some civilians have been killed, but that's the price of waging war. I want you to recall the correct and justified outrage when Israeli civilian deaths were dismissed in that same way.
Just real quick, she's a liberal on the show, and I don't agree with a lot of things that she says when it comes to some of the liberal things that she said. But, I'm going to keep playing her speech here, her monologue, if you will. And I agree with most of what she said in this monologue, which is why I'm just let this thing play, and then I'm going to stop it at a point. But she's on point right now. These are questions that, as Americans, because we are Americans first, or at least we should be, I think these are some of the questions that we need to be asking.
And now think about the most powerful man on the planet waving his hand. Well, that's just war. Okay. Now, for all the people, it's different because Israel doesn't target civilians. First of all, I think that's bullshit. And I think we can see that by the indiscriminate bombing, the fact that 42% of Gaza has already been destroyed. Second of all, very hard to argue that when they're literally executing a complete siege on the entire civilian population, which when you were with Ryan on Watch You Guys show, I thought it was, really great, very informative, insightful. He made a really, I think, key point, which is that in Obama being the quintessential lib, right? In his letter, where he gently expresses some concerns about what's going on, the thing he honed in on is the siege, because it's indefensible. Because there's no human shields. There's no actually, we're really trying hard to avoid hurting the civilian population. No, you are intentionally harming and keeping essential food, water, medicine, etc., from the entire civilian population. So to look at that and hand wave away and say, oh, well, we hope Israel follows international law. Well, we already know that they're not. But this has presented a real conundrum for liberals, Democrats like Joe Biden. Netanyahu is not going to give them the face-saving cover that perhaps previous Israeli administrations
That's one
might.
thing I will say about Netanyahu. Netanyahu has made it clear. If you don't know what his intentions are, then you're just not paying attention. Because he has made it clear. He is about to bomb the crap out of Gaza. And his goal is to destroy every single Hamas. And from everything I can see and everything that he said, he's going to destroy, and whatever casualties happen as a result of that, so be it. As long as he reaches his goal of destroying Hamas. And it seems like civilian casualties as a result of that are irrelevant. So when we say as the U.S., we back Israel unequivocally, this is what we're supporting. We're supporting the bombing of Gaza to destroy Hamas, civilian casualties. So be it. I'm just saying.
And so they're trying to come up with this, what Adam Johnson calls like bomb nicer language. Bernie Sanders going on the floor last night talking about, oh, let's have a humanitarian pause. Oh, so you can have a couple hours break from having your family and your towns blown up. That's what the quote unquote anti-war senator is calling for at this point. All this hand wringing, oh, we hope they follow international law. Again, you know already that they're not. So that's why all of this, all of this virtue signaling language is completely without content or without import. You can see how much the Israelis care about it by the way that they are going forward and doing exactly what they want. And so what is more critical is that we have already said and we've already indicated, and with what's going on in the House right now and the resolution that was just passed and the push to get more military weapons in their hands, that we'll back them really no matter what. That's the only message that they're really listening to at this point. And I just want to make one more, just to give you the numbers on the civilian death piece so we understand what we're talking about here. Yes, it's true. The health ministry in Gaza is Hamas related. And so you can't take verbatim what they're saying. Although I will point out the US government, as recently as just a couple months ago, was saying that their numbers tend to be accurate and they tend to rely on them and find them to be relatively reasonable, relatively reliable. But even if you discount that, you're talking about thousands of Palestinians killed. The majority of them have been women, children, and the elderly. Do you know how many Hamas fighters have been confirmed killed by their own reports? 13. Not 13%, not 1,300. 13 out of the thousands of Palestinians in Gaza who have been killed at this point. So when we're talking about civilian deaths, we're talking about what's going on in Gaza. If your goal is rooting out Hamas, this indiscriminate bombing campaign that they've been engaged in has nothing, very little to do with actually achieving that goal.
And that's where I'm going to stop right now. When I was listening to this, and she said, and I'm going to take her at her word because she considers herself to be a real journalist. She and their whole show prides themselves on reporting the truth. And so I'm going to take them at their word. And so if I'm wrong and they're wrong, let me know. Please do. But 13 confirmed Hamas death. 1,000 killed. That right there solidified for me why I feel uneasy about this situation. And I'm not here to say one is bad and one is good. I'm not playing that game. I've heard that game be played many a times now, and there's so many different opinions about, depending on who you talk to, about right or wrong. It's muddy. It is so muddy, it's ridiculous. But we can look at numbers because numbers don't lie. And if those numbers are even just partially true, 13 deaths of Hamas, 13 confirmed Hamas deaths, thousands of civilians. When we acknowledge, I've never heard anyone say that most of the people in Gaza are under the age of like 18, 20, which means too, most of those people weren't even around or were babies when Hamas, quote unquote, won this election that we all keep talking about. So they didn't even contribute to who their leaders would be at the time. But now they're forced to not only live under the direction of Hamas, but now they're also being forced to live under the consequences of Hamas. And for a country who obviously is not the U.S., but everyone prides Israel on having this great intelligence, great military. The IDJ, they say, is very effective. And so when you have 13 confirmed deaths and thousands of civilians dead, I'm questioning the whole process. I'm questioning every moment when you say you're out to kill Hamas. Because as many bombs have gone off in the last 2 weeks, you would think with an intelligence agency that is supposed to be superior, that you'd have more success at destroying a country whose infrastructure is not even 50% of yours. Because at the end of the day, you're controlling what they get anyway. So in essence, you're their boss. Because if you say no, they don't get. So why aren't you more effective at killing these people? And for those that are going to tell me about tunnels, I've heard about that story too. But then it only begs more of a question. Why are you bombing buildings when you believe they're in the tunnel? Again, I'm not here to state an opinion. And my overall goal would be that cooler heads come to play and we find a better solution to this story. That would be my prayer. Because at the moment, the solution that we're seeing seems like it's going to lead to the destruction of a group of people. And obviously, I don't think they're going to kill them all, but they're going to kill enough. And unfortunately, I believe it's not going to create peace. It's only going to create more animosity. And to me, why create more animosity? Why build up in a young men and young women animosity if peace is your goal? The same thing I keep going back to reminds me of Afghanistan and Iraq. We went in Afghanistan and Iraq and we bombed them. We had some of the same problems. They weren't necessarily tunnels, but they were caves. Cave systems that we didn't understand, and apparently I don't think Israel understands the cave system they say are in Gaza. And so yeah, we're bombing ground, but they're in the cave. They're in the tunnels. When are we going? Just like we had a trouble in Afghanistan. 20 years later, it took them 20 years, but they say that the hare may have won the race. The hare may be faster, but the tortoise won the race. 20 years, the tortoise won the race. Because we gone. And they there. Same people we trying to get rid of. And I ask that same question. When are we going to learn from history? And that on note, please like, subscribe to the channel. Comment. Tell me, man. Help me understand. Make it make sense for me. I'm honestly asking these questions. Because I'm not here to say who's right or who's wrong. I'm here to try and understand how this leads to an outcome that brings peace to Israel and peace to the Middle East. Because I think that's the fundamental concept that everybody's looking for, but I don't see how this is bringing us closer to that. So help me understand. I'm your host, B. Period, man. And on that note, I'm out.